Welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and we're recording in both video and audio today. And today I have with me Meg McKeen. I always say Meg McQueen, but it's actually Meg McKeen. I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now. In her third appearance in Profiles in Risk, she was nice enough to warn me that she's been here before, because otherwise I would have not realized that. Meg, how's it going today?
I'm doing all right. I feel like these days we have to qualify. I am fine. I am healthy. The people I love are healthy. So I will go with that for the moment.
You are absolutely right. I have kind of the same thing. I'm actually doing really well through this mess. Partially, my boss asked about 2 weeks ago how I'm doing, and I said healthy and employed, and it really comes down to that, right? Ultimately, and I'm thankful for that. But even beyond that, I happen to have a really good setup where myself and my girlfriend, we're used to working from home. We've been doing it for the last 2 years, so we have good setups, right? We're not those people that are working from from an hourly board or something crazy like that, killing your back. Also, the other thing is we don't have kids, so we're not one of those people who's homeschooling, which is also really, really hard, right? Uh, and then third, I have this beautiful window, so I get natural light all day. So yeah, I actually have it really, really good right now. But in client calls, you never, and my clients in my day job, most of them are in the Northeast. So they're right in the heart of this mess. And I have to be very careful with every call to keep that in mind. And when they ask me how I'm doing, like, so I completely hear you. Uh,
Yeah.
so Meg, super quick summary of what you do, and we'll include a link to that episode in the show notes. But your company is Adjunct Advisors. And
Yes.
whenever I look at that name, I always think claims, but you guys are not claims. So what do you do?
No, I live on the sales side of the business. I work with independent and agents of all types to help them to grow in their confidence and their knowledge as they sell insurance products. And more recently have developed a more narrow focus to serve women in that position for two reasons. One, there aren't enough of us who are on the front line selling insurance. It's a very honorable and noble and profession we're well suited to succeed in. And number two, I am one. So we speak the same language, approach the business in a similar way. So it's a much more natural alignment for me. So yeah, it's very gratifying work. It's hard work, especially right now as I'm working one-on-one with my clients. I straddle that line between personal development and professional development. And up until 6 weeks ago, it was heavy professional development. We were talking about sales, we were talking about pipelines, we were talking about strategies and particular deals, which I'm certainly happy to talk about. Now it's a much more emotional discussion. So I'm really holding space for conversations about what it means to work in our industry right now, what it means to be in the position to have to deliver bad news or news that your client might not agree with or be happy to hear. And then also straddle that line again with our personal lives, which we're all navigating at the same time that our business lives are changing in a big way. So it's heavy work. I said in one of my past conversations with Nick that this alignment between my work and my beliefs and frankly my heart has never been more clear. And I am where I am meant to be right now, but I'm a small business owner. So if you've been paying any attention to what's going on in the world and in the economy, it's a tough time, and I am not immune to that. I'm practicing gratitude and counting my blessings every day, but it's tough, and I'm feeling it, and it's tough. I'm not going to lie. So this
It
is
it.
great. It's
It could be a lot worse. You could have gone for a restaurant,
I know, right? I
right,
know.
or some other like brick and mortar type thing, which we're recording right now on what should be tax day, and it's not, on April 15th, 2020, in the heart of the coronavirus mess. Uh, and yeah, I but you serve uh, small businesses that are kind of in the forefront, right? Many have retail operations. I think most small agencies are kind of retail focused operations. So yeah, your clientele is definitely getting hit, which is going to affect your business. No way around it.
Yeah, small business is the backbone of our industry. As much as we might not want to deal with it, so to speak, because it's not high revenue generating, it is a large part of many agencies' books of business. So we are very hands-on, or we should be right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is the time when they need us the most. One of my earliest mentors in the business, who was an agent himself, always said, it's at the time of paying claims that you actually sell insurance.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not at the table when you're pitching and making proposals. It's at this time. And so this is a time when we need to lean in hard to empathy and feeling and compassion and care and kindness and patience and all of those things that as salespeople, we are not naturally driven to lean into. We're just not. We can be aggressive and we can be forceful and loud and boisterous, and unfortunately those are not emotions that the world is very receptive to these days. So everyone is experiencing this in a different way, and to be able to be a mirror and a sounding board for my clients right now has been really gratifying for me, and obviously helpful for them. But when we have our backward, our 2020 vision, as we call it, looking back, armchair quarterbacking, what would we say looking back? And I think we're going to recognize across the board that there isn't a single industry that's not impacted. There's not a single person that's not impacted, even if your job is quote unquote safe. And even if you are quote unquote healthy, our lives will be different for this. And so how we react and how we behave right now will really set the tone for what that looks like. So,
and that is a perfect transition to today's topic, and the reason that we were exchanging emails a couple of days ago. I was like, you just talked your way into, or was it? I don't remember if it was on the phone or email. I think it was email. You just talked your way into a podcast. I was actually on the phone. Basically, what I think that can you still hear me? Yeah. Okay. The world will be different in the post-coronavirus, kind of like after 9/11. The world was different after 9/11, and even after 2009, the world was different afterwards. I think that the world will be different, and we have a chance to build a better world. And I think in some ways we'll end up with a better world, especially when it comes to remote work, when it comes to having less needless commutes and the carbon that is burnt for those commutes and the stress that people go through. And you're right, like right now is the time to figure it out, how to make it work, right? And we're seeing shining examples of companies of all sizes that are making it work, and then we're seeing some horror stories of the things not to do, right? And those are exactly I wanted to kind of like shine a light on the shining examples, and then talk about what we can learn from the bad examples, so that we can help people avoid those mistakes. I live in the carrier space, and not only do I come from the carrier space, but in my day job with Jacobson, my clients are carriers. I sell temporary staffing services to carriers, and in the last few weeks, pretty much every client has said that they successfully transitioned to being 100% remote, and they're surprised that it worked out, but they did, right? And that's fantastic, right? The thing is now, how do you do that well, right? So what are you seeing for your clients are generally smaller, right? Just by who they are. Agents and brokers tend to be smaller than carriers, right? A small carrier has several hundred people, usually. So agencies, what's the average size that you work with, like 15, 20 people kind of thing?
That or slightly larger, but it does run the gamut. And people, it's interesting, you set out to solve a certain problem and you think you know how it's going to go, and then you learn, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
continuing to learn. So I thought that I would largely be retained by the firm itself. What I'm finding right now in this current environment is that salespeople are reaching out individually to work with me because what they need, they're not getting from the traditional corporate hiring, right?
Which
So,
is, yeah,
yeah,
not surprising and
right.
heartbreaking.
So there's this shift that I've been seeing, and frankly was a catalyst for why I'm doing what I'm doing in the way that I'm doing it, that professional growth and development is now being led by the individual rather than the company. So instead of the company saying, here's a 3-day training, go to this training, the actual individual contributor is saying, I'm going to this training and I'm charging it to my expense account, or I want
And
to
just
work
out
with
of
this,
pocket.
either out of pocket or then, working behind the scenes to get some sort of a reimbursement.
And
So
that goes to the very heart of why we started Insurance Nerds. Basically, the idea that you are in charge of your own career.
yep.
And for millennials, we know this. We've always known this. This is no surprise. I think some of the older Gen Xers grew up in the world where the company really kind of guided your career, and then you got thrown into the reality by the time you got to kind of your early middle career, that's not the way the world works now, right? And it's hard, and yeah, you do have to kind of to very much invest in your own, and figure out how to get reimbursed when you can, but really focus on investing in yourself, because as the companies, and especially on the agency side, and in the agency side, especially with producers, it seems that nobody has any idea how to train producers. Like, number one, in fact, at Jacobs, number one call we get that we can't help with is helping find producers. The one thing we don't do staffing wise.
Yep.
Uh,
I
so
don't blame you.
so
I mean, it's tough. It's a tough job once you're in it, let alone trying to attract someone to do it, because we have not the best success rate. That's not what we're here to talk about. Let's focus. I love the
uh,
talk, right? I love the conversation, and we could talk all day. So you mentioned the transition, right? So step
mm,
one was getting all of the physical bodies and all of the physical equipment set up at home. And I think as an industry, we can pat ourselves on the back that we did that. We did it quickly. All of that preconceived idea that it wasn't possible, it's possible. And I think some of the lag will be, do we have all the security measures in place? Are we actually, is data secured? That's kind of like part B of this whole
mm-hmm.
experiment, which is what it really is. But so we've got the bodies in place, but we still do the jobs that we do. And some of them lend themselves really well to remote and some of them don't. And what I'm finding is I get this great sort of bird's eye view on what's going on in agencies in particular. And I've had this by virtue of what I do. So I'm a safe space where people can talk about the realities of the workplace. And as much as we like to think I closed 5 deals and I've got 16 in my pipeline, it's actually more like I can't get my account manager to support me and help me get this deal done. I don't know how to approach my boss because I feel like I'm being undercompensated, or I feel like I don't have his support or his confidence. These are really powerful how to navigate the workplace type discussions. And so then you add this layer now of we're all remote. And so we can leverage technology. We're on Zoom right now. I've been a big fan of Zoom for a long time. I think we're getting to a point now, it's week 5 of this work from home model. I think we're feeling a little bit of Zoom burnout. I was on it for 8 hours yesterday, like not necessarily in a row, but it's a lot of Zoom time. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. And as someone who was very protective of my time and created strong boundaries about when I was face to face versus when I would have phone meetings and Zoom meetings, those lines have become very blurred. So I'm having to
Interesting.
kind of
Now
rein
that
that
now,
back in.
now that there's no in-person meetings, you're having an overload of everybody wants to do them via video.
Yeah. And I love it, right? I love it
Interesting.
on one
Okay.
hand. People are coming out of the woodwork. We've got this gift of time and we've got this gift of the sense of giving. Any of us who are in a consulting role right now, what do we have that we can offer for low to no cost to continue to add value in a time when our own pipelines have largely dried up? That's just the reality. The capital that's out there that was previously invested in training is now being fed.
Always the first thing to go.
Exactly, right? So I would argue that training salespeople is not a luxury. However, that's how it's viewed on a balance sheet, right? So we're all kind of settling in, we're all positioning, but what I'm finding in all of the conversations I'm having is that other people are experiencing this Zoom fatigue, I've heard it called. And I've seen some really interesting things work, but it brings up this question. One of the things we have when we work together personally, physically, is small talk and banter and inside jokes. And it's really hard to convey that in 15-minute increments over a web conference. It can be done, but you have to work at it. So what I'm seeing is particularly a lot of middle managers, so not C-suite and not frontline, but they're continuing with business as usual as though it's business as usual, and it's not. I'm seeing, toddlers in the background and dogs barking, and that's the reality when we've moved our office into our home. Our office is now our home. Our home is now our office, and those lines are really blurry right now.
And without having had a chance to design, right? I was really lucky that my life was very carefully designed for work from home. Most people were thrust to work from home without the ability to get the right furniture, the right setup,
and
the right separation from the family.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in the same boat as you. I don't have any children or pets, and I'm currently single, so I'm not sheltered in place with a partner. My reality is very different. But imagine if now you're working from home, managing a team of underwriters, and you're also homeschooling. I mean, this is the reality for some people, and we know this, right? Everyone
for most people, for most working age professionals.
And we're all
you and I are the
feeling it
exception
in some way. So we can't take the prior, this worked for me before, and so therefore it will work for me in this new environment, because nothing about this new environment is normal. So we agree on that. What I get out of this bird's eye view are these amazing sound bites where I'm hearing middle managers that are having to report their time in like 30-minute increments back to their leader. And they're having to do that not just for themselves, but for their team members as well. And so they're spending hours and hours and hours of their week literally justifying their existence while the projects that they've been working on and the leading that they've been doing of their team sits on the sideline. So it's fascinating to me that these were leaders, and it's interesting, leader manager, right? Like, we're really figuring out now who the managers are and who the leaders are. And there was a moment in my long winding work history where I was managing a team that was largely remote. And my style was to lead rather than manage. So I viewed my role for them as clearing the path. What's in your way to getting where you want to go, and how can I remove that for you, rather than telling you what to do. And of course, you have to set expectation. That's part of being a good manager, and people expect that of you. But understanding the different work styles of all of your contributors, and then leaning into them when you can, instead of expecting everyone to conform to your rules, it's requiring the flexing of different muscles right now, especially for middle managers. So I'm a rambler, Tony, so feel free at any point
no worries.
to like call a timeout.
It blew me away, that story of the now remote middle manager being forced to submit 15-minute detail, right, of the whole 8-hour day for them and their team. What incredible lack of trust, right, and lack of leadership, and instead of that, like dictionary definition of micromanagement.
Yeah.
And you're gaining nothing, right? Like
No.
right, that person's probably spending half their work day getting that thing done, and not actually moving anything forward, not actually, that is insane. And I can totally see, especially in the agency space, I've met so many long time agency principals, and you were talking earlier about how the business has become a lot of coaching women in insurance. That is exactly the opposite of right. The traditional agency principal today is the 65-year-old white male who grew up in a very different world, and rose to have his own agency, and all the tools that worked 30 years ago are thoroughly useless in a world where you don't even have your employees physically present, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Absolutely, like just go ahead and retire. Honestly, like if you're that's that's my piece of advice. You probably don't listen to Purple Seed Risk, but if your go-to or the one tool you feel comfortable with is, and you're an agency principal or like senior leader, it is telling your middle managers report everybody's use of time by the 50-minute increments.
But here's the thing. So I hear that, and I'm with you. It's ridiculous. It's classic micromanagement. When I think about how I'm navigating my own business and how you are in your business, and all of the people I know that are somehow connected to our industry right now, we're all figuring it out as we go. And so nobody has the rule book, right? I do a lot of writing on LinkedIn. I'm very much about the feelings right now, not necessarily about the tactics, because the tactics are all a guess. We don't know. We don't know that this 5-step system is going to work, or that 12-step whatever is going to work. And we're craving that very tangible knowledge because that feels accessible. If I do these 10 things, then I'm going to be okay, and it's going to be paradise, and it's all going to be fine. So sometimes I think we put this false expectation on leadership that they should have all the answers. And so hopefully they have enough emotional credibility with their team and trust that we do look to them for guidance and they're right. What I realized with that particular individual is there's an emotion behind that micromanagement. I don't know what it is. I don't know that person, but it's probably some fear. It's probably anxiety. It's right.
They're grasping for control.
Yeah,
in a world that is right now not giving them any, right? Their job had become harder and harder and harder over the last decade, in that your people might be in the office, but they might not be engaged in the actual job, which wasn't the case before, right? I talk about that a lot in my generational talks, that you can't manage anymore by body and seat time. Now you don't even have body and seat time, right? And I liked the two things from what you just said. I really liked, and it kind of shines a light of how my own employer is doing it well. One of them was the there is no guidebook, right? And there is a little bit of a guidebook. Some tech companies have been nice enough to release kind of their like how to manage people at home thing. So we have that, but you're right. We don't know what's going to work in today's environment. We've had to reinvent in my own world. We've had to reinvent the verbiage, the voicemail, the email, the marketing that we send out to our clients and prospects, because the old version that didn't mention the current situation sounds out of touch and sounds disconnected and insensitive, right?
Tone deaf.
Exactly, tone deaf. Exactly, it sounds tone deaf. Yeah. And then the new theories on what might work and what might not are unproven. But the emotional piece, you can pretty much bet that anybody you're dealing with right now, whether it's an existing client, a prospect, or is feeling a ton of uncertainty, right? And is feeling a ton of fear or something close to at least anxiety about the current situation or where things are going. So I think you can go a long way in that. And in fact, we're starting every conference call, whether it's for a prospect or with an existing client, with thank you for the time. And hey, first of all, how are you and the family doing? Are you staying? Is everybody staying healthy?
Mm-hmm. It's a that level of compassion and empathy is a gift. And we daydream sounds like a positive. It's not all going to be positive, but we think about what does the next normal look like. I'm hearing that term, and I like it, as far as not the new normal and certainly not the old normal, but the next normal. And it's really leaning into this idea of being more caring and more thoughtful. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure the insurance industry could use a little more caring
Oh
and
yeah.
thoughtful, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like on our best day going into this, we didn't have the greatest, reputation or perception maybe by the public. And I don't think this time is helping us necessarily either. So the more that we can do to continue to be ambassadors for a positive experience in the industry, I think it's our responsibility and our privilege, frankly, for being here. So it's a fascinating, defining time. It really is. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I see so many people showing up, and middle managers that have become integral part of teams, and when the time is right will be rewarded handsomely for their efforts, because it's not just that they're working 7 to 7 or 8 to 8 or whatever the wild hours are now that this whole work life thing has become like, what is it now? What is it right now? I don't know.
The the work life thing has always been tricky for work at home people. I see it with myself and my girlfriend. We tend to work longer hours. The research is clear that most people do. Even crazier now that most people don't even have the delineation with this is the 100% dedicated work I can do at home while the kids are at school, and this is the some work that I can do after they're back or they're in bed or whatever. Now that there's no delineation at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I think there's a boundary, right? If you can draw it, great. If you can't, because you work in a position where you're fielding calls from claimants, or there are very real 24/7 jobs right now. We are essential as an industry for a reason. What we do is needed now more than ever. But within the boundaries, when you can set them, you're allowed to not check your email at 7:00 at night, even if your boss is emailing you because he or she has put their kids to sleep, and that's when they have an hour to sit back down at the computer. That's okay for them, and it's okay for you to say no. One of the things that just came up this week in conversation was, we've now been 5 to 6, maybe longer weeks in our current environment. If you haven't taken a day off, it's time to take a day off. And we ask ourselves, like, well, what would I do?
okay.
Why not just sit at the
Yeah.
computer and work all day? The reality is we need the break. We need to reset. We need to refocus. Whatever, if it's not a puzzle, if it's not cooking, whatever the thing is that you've found you love during this time, or if you haven't found it yet, take the break.
Give yourself
Netflix,
time to
right?
find
Like,
it.
even
Mm.
like, I think we're all hoping that our vacation schedule will be back on track this fall. I am too, and those days will be sacred then. But the reality is they may not, and you need them now. You need that day now, and so kind of leaning into that is really important, because that burnout thing's real. So it's managers burn out, employees burn out. We all do. We all have a breaking point. When you layer all this extra on top, all the extra worry, if your stress level is normally a 2 or a 3 or a 4 after a glass of wine or before a glass of wine, it might be a 6 or 7. And for us to maintain a level 6 or 7 right now for a long period of time, it's not physically healthy. And I'm not an expert in that area, but our body gives us great signals when it's time to take a break. And what I'm finding now is this great communication between managers and their managers. So managers and higher level executives. I was on a call with a woman who works on the benefit side of the business, and she's a friend. And I asked her candidly, how's it going at work? What's the response been from leadership right now? Do you still feel the pressure? Are you still compelled to sell, even though this is not a sales environment right now? And she said, you know what? I know I'm working for the right firm because he asked me how I was sleeping. And I'm spoiler alert, I'm going to write about this on LinkedIn because I think it's really powerful. How are you sleeping? And he knew chances are not well, right? Like, who is sleeping well right now? I'm not. And I'm a great sleeper on a good day. And I don't know why I'm staying up later than I used to and why my mind is going at 4 a.m. Those are not normal patterns for me. And then the more I talk with other people, they're experiencing it too. So we're all feeling this differently, but we're united in this interesting sleep issue. Well, for a manager or a leader to pinpoint that and then create a dialogue around that creates a level of understanding that supersedes an overdue renewal or an irate agent or an irate client. It's a connection at a human level, which is where we're all craving connection right now, is understanding, are you in this with me? Are we together? Because it's so much uncertainty is out there. So kudos to that manager who just gets it, right? Like you don't have to send 16 emails. You don't have to have a Zoom call that could have been an email. You don't have to force it to let your people know that you care and that you're there for them. So it's fascinating to me.
Hard times are most definitely where employee relationships are made, where employee loyalty, let's put it that way. I'm usually talking about how generationally employee loyalty is dead, but it's when hard times and the contrast between, I just saw a bunch of people get downsized, which luckily in our industry we haven't seen. And what I'm seeing right now, personally, Tony, in my day job with Jacobson, where we haven't downsized anybody. We now have an every other week video meeting with the owners of the company, and they've very much been like, we're fine, right? They've very much been supportive and it. Let's put it this way: we have a small department, probably 3 or 4 people that whose job is to arrange travel for our consultants that I place. Well, we haven't had anybody traveling for a month now, right? A little bit over a month now. In a lot of companies, those people would have been downsized already. Mm-hmm. Instead, the strategy has been, well, your job's going to change, right? But we're going to retrain you for where we need you today. Mm-hmm. And that buys incredible loyalty, not only from those people, but from the rest of us that see that happening, right? Yeah. So, and I report to a very high D, get it done former sales guy who grew into being a sales leader, and he's asking us and me, how are you feeling? Right? This is not a normal question for his personality type, mm-hmm. But it's the right thing right now, and it definitely. It start meetings and one-on-ones and catch-ups with it's a crazy time. How are you feeling? How are you sleeping? Exactly. That's it. It definitely sets a much better relationship, mm-hmm. And will be the difference between you're gaining tons of employee loyalty, or a lot of people, right, like rats running away from a sinking ship the moment that they have the ability, right? You might not lose him right away, because right now it'd be hard to make a move unless it was already set up. But the moment things go back to normal, you'll know whether you got this right or not.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it will be interesting to see, I think about that from a client standpoint for an agent. This is the time that you're really setting the tone once the doors open again and there's a choice again. Are they going to stay? Or are they going to go? And they're going to make that decision based on what's happening right now. So we have to channel all that energy and all of that, I'd say reality, not optimism, but reality. I find, anybody that's worked with me is tired of hearing me say, but I'll say it again, you got to meet them where they are. So you might sell insurance and they might manufacture a widget, but you got to figure out what you have in common and meet them there. And it's probably not insurance. So we want to come in and we want to save them 10% or beat the competition. And that's not the conversation that they want to have with us. So this is a really good time to find that commonality and meet them exactly where they are, because we're going through this together.
And you know what? That is one huge advantage, that one huge silver lining. The entire planet is going through this together, right? And while it's shining a light on a lot of the inequalities in our country, and right, my quarantine is very different from somebody who lost a blue collar job because of this mess. The people that I'm calling on are in the same situation as I am, and we now have an immediate point of to connect on. But you have to
Yeah.
do it sincerely.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and it's interesting. So literally this morning I posted on LinkedIn and I had a rough weekend. I don't know what it was, but I've been pretty okay, honestly. Like, this is a precarious time, but I'm coming into this. I've always been a fairly optimistic, pragmatic person. And Saturday was just a rough day. And I shared that I woke up feeling scared and mad, and scared in a way. And I'll share this candidly because I think it's important for people to hear kind of the reality that while we're all experiencing it differently, we're actually experiencing it's real. This is reality. And I'm scared that I'm a small business owner and this is my livelihood, right? And scared that all the good may have come before this time and what's to follow may not be. And that might be my reality. And then mad because I left a really good run on the corporate side. I was on a path, like I was on the track, and now's a newsflash, a really good time to be a rising manager and a woman as a rising manager. And I was not, I knew that when I left. And so I left and I stepped back, and then I stepped back in a very different and very risky way. And I was mad because all my friends with their 6-figure corporate white collar jobs who are right now annoyed by the kids underfoot and the barking dog are still getting that paycheck every 2 weeks and still getting that
They have the
401k match.
stability. Mm-hmm.
And so their set of worries is very different than mine. Very valid. Mine are very valid. Yours are all valid, but different. And I was really, it's the first time I've really been mad, which is an emotion that I wasn't expecting to feel, because I had taken that chance, and now, this is the reality. So I say that because I think it's an important part of, I am in our industry as well, right? Like, it's not all just carriers and agents. There's a lot of us who are affecting change in a way that is not the traditional corporate, big company with all that goes with
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's a very different experience for all of us. So I love that you have a leader in your organization that right now is so keyed into that emotional intelligence that we talk about. I'm sure he's very technical and he knows the industry and he knows how to get deals done, but to be able to dial up the emotional intelligence right now is what's going to separate, again, the managers from the leaders, and also set the tone for what does this look like on the other side of it, right? Like, we were teams going into this. We're teams right now, and we're going to be teams on the other side. And what is that team? Are we going to be a happy family, or are we going to be a dysfunctional family? And who knows, right? It could go any way at this point. But I'm finding people are starting to offer some solutions as far as like how to spice up Zoom meetings, how to continue to do team building. How do you create chit chat and small talk in a Zoom meeting? It's hard to do when you're not a cubicle away or you're not in the same
Mm-hmm.
proximity. A woman in my network, Saya Hillman, is a facilitator for team building events, and she's got virtual offerings, which I think are great. So like, we don't want to hop on another Zoom call, but yet it's what we have right now. And I'll say a caveat to that is like, newsflash, the phone still works. Somebody said that to me this morning, and I'm like, that's a really good point. Like, instead of scheduling another Zoom call, just pick up the phone. It's not like I'm not here to answer it, right? Like, it seems so basic when she said it. And then another, I'm totally name dropping because these are women who like deserve all the opportunity right now because they're doing wonderful work. Melissa Dinwiddie is another. She does graphic facilitation. So hang with me. You have a virtual meeting, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people or bigger team, maybe executive level, maybe strategy. And she's behind the scenes doing a graphic recording. So drawing the content of the meeting and then delivering that to you as a file, an electronic file. Because we learn in different ways, right? Like, there are going to be people that are on this call right now and are not looking at you. And you think they're on their phone and they're actually doodling, because doodling is the only way that they're going to retain what you're saying. And there's going to be people that prefer to have video off because they're just not comfortable. They'd rather be on the phone. And this is a huge leap for them. And so the way we process information and take away the lessons is different for everyone. So she's offering this very, very visible option, which is beautiful. It's art on one hand, and it's also a great takeaway and leave behind that's presenting this information instead of in 17 PowerPoint slides in kind of one cool way. So I love to see the creativity. I love that instead of people sitting on their hands, like, I think I'll just throw them under the bus. A lot of agency principals are like counting the days till we're done with this, till we can get butts in seats and, back to business as usual. And there's going to be a lot of empty office space at the end of this.
That's thank you for reminding me of that, because it had kind of slipped my mind. But so I've got a friend, and in this case, not in the insurance industry, but let's say in the industry very close to similar to insurance, and dominated by small offices with white collar workers that really could be working from home. And she joined the firm, small firm, let's say 25, 30 people, 4 years ago, right out of college, and at first no work from home at all. Then, and again, in a very white collar job, so it really, like, she totally could have done her job from home. Then she was out for a surgery, and basically they gave her a laptop and they said, as you start recovering, you can work from home right until you're ready to come back to the office. So they started getting used to it. Before, she literally had a desktop. So that was about 2 years ago. And now, as this mess, so she was back in the office normally most days. As this mess started, she lives with her mom, who is over 60, so high risk, right? So as soon as this thing started, she's like, I'm not coming in. I'm gonna work from home for now because I'm putting my mom at risk if I come into the office. And they were okay with that. I think last Thursday or Friday, she got a call from one of the partners letting her know that they are not renewing the lease on the office, right? And this is not something they would have ever thought, but it just so happens that lease renewal is coming up, and right, it's probably gonna be a few months before they're back in the office. It makes more sense to get another office once this mess has moved on. What I realize, and I'm sure you realize, but they don't realize it, there's no putting this genie back in the bottle, right? Like, what's going to happen is number one, you're going to realize that in your you're going to realize that you're not a restaurant. The venue. They rarely see clients, like just the type of business. They're coming in to do work that they could definitely do from home, right? This is not a retail establishment where people come in. Nope. So number one, the owners are going to realize that the office, in 2020, the office was just an expense. And number two, even if they don't, the employees are going to realize that they can go work for one of the many small white collar businesses who are going to make that same realization, right?
Yeah.
There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. A lot of small companies are just gonna not have an office anymore, and medium and large companies are going to have a lot less people in the office every day. Maybe not shut down the office completely. But there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. We've seen that it works.
Yeah, no, and I know you've been such an advocate for it. I have been as well. I grew up, so to speak, in the industry working for Cincinnati Financial, Cincinnati Insurance. They've been work from home since their inception. So all their field folks always worked from home back in,
All the field people. Okay, yeah,
yeah. So they have a
yeah.
headquarters, right, for all the back office and leadership, but all of the frontline underwriting, claims handling is all done in the field. They started doing that back when fax machines were new, back when you used to handwrite ACORD applications and deliver them to the post office. So they understood the value of, it's not just about overhead, but it's about work-life balance and about proximity to the client. And it made good business sense for them.
Hmm.
So for me personally, I've been very accustomed to this work from home lifestyle because it's been a part of my professional life for many years. A lot of companies are figuring it out very quickly. To your point, if I worked in commercial real estate, this would be a very different conversation right now. And
Correct.
I would be talking about, how do I convert? I live and work in Chicago. I can see the skyline, which is all office space that's vacant right now. That's the reality. What does that look like? If I'm that property owner, I'm thinking, okay, we've got to reimagine. Now it's work life. Now it's condos on the perimeter and a shared workspace in the courtyard. Because what am I going to do with it? This we've created, this is a fantastic opportunity, but it's also a problem, right? Like life is just going to look really different. It's
Hmm.
going to change. So it's all about, I'm seeing these opportunities pop up right now. We're all working from home. I'm talking to you literally right now, sitting at my dining room table. This is not the best ergonomic setup. If I were here for 6 months, I'd end up with back pain and issues. And well, now there's an opportunity for a contract ergonomics expert to make house calls, not in COVID environment, but in the after,
Hmm.
right? To set you up and make sure that your desktop is at the right height and that your seat is perfect. That business likely didn't exist at that scale before. So there's going to be things that come from this that we just couldn't have fathomed in a good way. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. It's just, it's going to be a transition, right? Like it's going to be painful for some people. There's going to be people that don't want to work from home. Flat out don't want to. I like the balance. I like listening to my podcasts on the train in the morning. I don't want to work from my dining room table. Does our home look different in the future? I live in 1,000 square feet. I don't have a home office. Does the condo of the future have one bedroom, an office, and a living room instead of this hybrid space where you actually have dedicated office space, because then 80% of the population is working from home? I don't know. You talk about the genie in the bottle. I don't have the crystal ball. But I think it's going to create opportunity and a fresh way to look at what we do. It's really forcing the hand of a lot of people that maybe didn't want to go this route. But here we are, and
And it works.
it's working.
The work
Yeah.
gets done. Yeah, the
Hmm.
work gets done. Things are moving forward. That is in the carrier side. That's one thing that I'm hearing from the clients. Um, yeah, we managed to go 100% remote.
Yeah.
Uh, it, it
It's definitely working in the short term. There's definitely things that are coming up, onboarding. How do you and
there'll
you know this, being on your, where you sit from your perspective, but the interview process, so much of the initial interview is being done remote. That's been a thing for a long time. But what if that face to face never happens, or happens once a year or very infrequently? Are we okay with that
there's
from
gonna
an
be
emotional standpoint?
there's gonna be definitely an opportunity to figure out the best practices and then train the companies on how to do it for both interviewing and onboarding remotely.
Yeah.
And some of that we're gonna have to figure out, right? We just don't have the best practices yet. Maybe the tech world does, but not for business kind of in the more traditional side of the economy. So there's definitely going to be an opportunity there. Uh, I am an optimist, and I really think that we can build a better business world from here on, and one that is less based on early 20th century and mid 20th century technology and more based on the reality of life with 21st century technology.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I it's it's tricky.
Yeah.
It's tricky, and if you're a leader who's been in the leadership for 20 years and you thought that you were gonna cruise to the end, you might have to learn a lot of new skills, but that might push a lot of people to retire, especially in our industry, and young leaders might get an early chance to shine
Yeah.
because they're more able to do this. And there are things that definitely benefit from in person. I'm not saying that larger companies won't have any in person office.
Mm-hmm.
Strategic work benefits from being there in person. Uh, I I travel to Chicago once a month to go be at Jacobson home office to connect with everybody at home office. I'm missing being able to do that right now. There's definite benefit to building relationships in person, but then
Mm-hmm.
actually getting my job done, right? Being there every day just to get the job done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, it's been a great discussion. Thank you so much. I would summarize it in basically get comfortable talking feelings remotely, because that is what people need right now. And then get comfortable with remote leadership going forward, because that is what will be required in the new world in whatever form it takes. It'll be a lot more remote work, at
Yeah.
least for part of the time or most of the time. Uh, Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.